Hello, good evening. How is everyone? Yes, it's sweet and savory today. I'm Stephen Davey, senior producer here at CitySpace. It's that time of year when the sweet smell of cookies and other treats waft out of kitchens around the world. And if there's one person that knows this wonderful aroma and the meaning in all our lives, it's Dorie Greenspan. Let me tick through a few reasons. Many of you are probably familiar. Dorie now has a shelf with 5 James Beard Awards. She is a columnist for the New York Times and now the author of a twice-weekly newsletter, XOXO Dorie. Very cool. And Dorie's here tonight with her 14th cookbook. Yes, 14 cookbooks. Her latest is titled Baking with Dorie, Sweet, Salty, and Simple. And keen observers will notice something different about this new recipe collection from Dorie. Salt? Savory? Yes. Pay close attention. This is going to be fun. Some housekeeping notes. Please keep your masks up if you're not actively eating or drinking. We are taking your questions. Head over to Slido and enter the hashtag Curated Cuisine and add your thoughts there. And our bookstore partner, Brookline Booksmith, has copies of Baking with Dorie available for purchase out in the CitySpace lobby. Dorie will be signing copies after the event tonight. And for those of you here, Adam, if you could kindly put up the devil's thumbprint. Yes. Stick around after the conversation to taste some new recipes from Dorie's new book, prepared by our partners at Boston University Programs in Food and Wine. Thank you very much. Now, leading us on our culinary journey tonight with Dorie Greenspan is On Point host Meghna Chakrabarti. Over to you, Meghna.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. This is the most full that I have seen CitySpace in 21 months. So it is so great to have you all here. And hello, everybody watching online at home or wherever you are. I'm still trying to get used to the fact that we've expanded so much virtually as well. So it's really lovely to see all of you. This is my second CitySpace event since March of 2020.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see you.
Yeah, and when they asked me, would you like to have a conversation with Dorie Greenspan? I was like, yes. Even if we had to be in like individual bubbles, I would have done it. So,
Bubba, I'm glad we're right where we are.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming here. And I would, if it's okay, I would like to start with a pandemic question. Okay, and it's this, because I was thinking that no one wants to go through this experience again.
Ever again.
But I was wondering, I was thinking this morning, like, do you remember that time last year where all of a sudden everybody was baking? Like everybody was baking and you could not find flour? Did you also suffer from the flour shortage? What did you do?
So I'm embarrassed. Well, I'm not embarrassed. I was very lucky. I am a little embarrassed because, who knew this was coming? We didn't. But my husband's a bread baker, and we buy flour in 50-pound sacks. And right before the world closed down, we bought 50 pounds of flour. So if you had lived on my street in Connecticut, you would have gotten flour from me. I was packing up little bags of flour and dropping them at neighbors' doorsteps. Yeah, it was frightening to see the shelves. I mean, everything empty and yeah.
Were people like slipping you rolls of toilet paper in exchange?
That was serious too.
Well, it doesn't surprise me though that you were the generosity, because that's one of the things that like baking does. It kind of makes you a more generous person.
I think it does. I mean, are you all bakers? I mean, why would you be here otherwise? Yeah. Okay.
Well, you all can at least say you enjoy the fruits of baking.
Well, but I mean, every baker needs an eater.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we need to be paired up with people who like to eat sweets. But you bake to share, because, I mean, I call it bacon release. I'm going to get a T-shirt eventually, yeah. Because, well, I bake a lot, and so I do, give it to my neighbors. But that's why we bake. We bake to be able to share it with people. We bake in batches. So yeah.
So did it make a lot of sense to you that as soon as this transformative change hit the world and we were all of a sudden cut off from those physical experiences of sharing, that people gravitated towards, well, like you said, baking is sharing, to just do that at home as part of the way to cope with this kind of new reality we had?
And I think, I've always felt this about baking, but I was so grateful for this during the pandemic, that when you bake, you're creating something. You're starting with very simple ingredients and transforming that. And I'm going like this because I think that, we do this with our hands. We actually hand make something. And that's so gratifying. And there was, in the before times and in future times, it's sometimes hard to find something that we can do ourselves from beginning to end and look at something and say, I made it, and take pleasure in it and be satisfied and be proud of what we made. And you do that all the time with baking. And so I think that those qualities were more important during the pandemic.
Yeah, it just seemed to me that all of a sudden there was something very profound that baking allowed people to do in the midst of all this loss. This is not going to be a pandemic conversation, I promise you, but I do think that there's something quite special about that making, and especially, I'm not a very good baker.
So
I cook more.
So I was going to ask you, because I know that you cook, but baking is not your everyday activity. Did you find yourself baking more during those times? No. No. Okay.
Well, I'm going to blame the flour shortage on that. I had to scour like 5 stores before I could.
Had I known how important it was to you, I would have come and
Secret
dropped
shipment
some.
from Connecticut. No, but I did cook a lot. I did cook a lot more. I'm very fortunate. I live in this little condo association, and all the families in the various units were actually pretty close. So there was a lot of food exchange for a year. So this is the same kind of thing. But baking in particular, ignore the outliers like me, there are just so many more people. Like all of a sudden, we're doing much more than they had in the before times.
Tending sourdoughs.
Yeah.
And which is easier than adopting a pet. Well, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think I'd like to think that what started during those times will continue. And I really think that one of I keep looking for positives from the pandemic, is that so many people became more confident cooks and more creative cooks because of not, because you couldn't get every ingredient that you wanted, and so, I'll try this or I'll try that, or and we did so much cooking.
Yeah. How many of you raise your hand? And I'm sorry about the online audience, but
They're raising
like
their
over the time where maybe you were home a lot more than usual, did you master a recipe that you hadn't before, or tried
that's a great
something
question.
new? Right? You raise your hand. Anyone? Yeah. Oh, look at all those hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the midst of a crisis, there was at least people trying to make good of an opportunity. Did you have a pandemic go-to recipe?
No, in fact, I cooked, I think, more creatively during the pandemic. So our son and daughter-in-law were with us for 5 months. It was quite wonderful until I realized that they came because they were afraid we were going to die. And so I thought they just wanted to be close in this difficult time, but they were actually really worried about us. But so we were together, and I wanted to cook for them. I wanted to make, and that's how I know how to make people happy, is to cook and bake for them. And so I really, pushed myself, and I made things I hadn't made before. Pushed is the wrong word, but I wanted them to have good meals at the end of the day.
Wait, what haven't you made before?
Oh, lots of things, right? So I buy cookbooks all the time, but I never cook from them because either I'm working on my own recipes, so I'm not looking at somebody else's, or it's the end of a day and who's got time to start looking, so I just cook from what I have. But I had the full set of Ottolenghi, and I had bought all the spices, mostly Middle Eastern cooking. So I cooked from his books.
Yeah.
My daughter-in-law is from Shanghai, and I learned to make not that scallion pancakes are Shanghainese, but we did a lot of Asian cooking. I've got there are ingredients that I had never had in the house before that I was learning to use. So that was exciting.
Does some of those ingredients that you hadn't used before make it into the new book?
Not in baking. Is that true? Well, there's wait. There's So there's sumac in that was an Ottolenghi purchase in a cornmeal and lemon cake. I brought the book and I left it up there in the room.
That's okay.
What is in that book? Who wrote that book?
I put you on the spot.
Yeah, the author had some recipes in there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's, when you're, this is, I think, true of all of us as we're cooking, but it's true as I'm working on recipes. I'll open the cupboard and see a spice or see an ingredient and think, oh, it's not what I had planned to use, but there's star anise, which you rarely see that as a but as a highlighted, spotlighted ingredient. And there it was. I had used it for cooking Asian beef, and thought, grind it up, put it in a cookie with some coffee. That's a good idea. But it happens because it's there, and I'm searching.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I would have never thought to, I mean, this is why I cannot claim that I'm a creative cook, but I would have never seen star anise in my cupboard and been like, I'm going to grind that up and add that to coffee. So can you talk a little bit about when you're making, creating, experimenting around new recipes? How does that, I almost called it alchemy. Is it alchemy? How does that happen, that creative process happen?
I don't know.
You just do it?
I don't know. You would think I would have an answer by now. So I got fired from my very first job as a baker. I should never have been hired because I wasn't qualified at all, but I got fired very quickly. And I got fired because I changed the recipe.
Oh.
Right? It was the signature recipe. and I thought, this would be so much better with prunes, everybody's favorite fruit, prunes and Armagnac instead of raisins and whiskey, so I changed it, right? And I got fired for, this is going to be the title of my memoir if I ever write one, Creative Insubordination. And so the person who fired me, the owner of the restaurant, said she liked the cake, but that wasn't the point of it. So years later, when I
And then she served it as the new signature
That's
after that, right?
I never got credit for that. It took me a while to get over that. And years later, when I started writing cookbooks, and I had a section after recipes called Playing Around, which gives people the chance to, the chance to, try different ingredients in the book. I realized that that's just the way I work. So that as I'm working, I could be in the middle of it. I work with pencil and paper, and so I've got my ingredients out, and I'm writing what I'm doing, and I'll have this, what if? And it comes, most everything comes from the ingredients themselves, from, smelling it, or thinking about it, or associating it with something else I know. I can't answer your question.
Well, I always think actually for answering questions about creativity is very hard because part of the creative process is to not actually be sort of engaging the logical brain. So I completely understand. But we actually have a great question that sort of springboards off
Stump
that.
me again.
This is an audience question. So after now you have 14.
14.
Right? Cookbooks. Where do you start when writing a recipe, and how do you continue to get inspiration after so many cookbooks?
Yeah, so this last book had a real origin story. I was not going to write another book. When I finished Everyday Dorie, I thought it's a baker's dozen, like perfect, right? Enough. And then I had this scone in Santa Barbara. I put it on Instagram. A friend said, you should write a savory baking book. And I got that feeling that you get when something's a good idea. And so that's how this book started. And it never became a savory book. There's a savory chapter, but it just kept getting sweeter and sweeter. But when I started this book, my idea was, it's my 14th book. I'm going to get out into the world. I'm going to see what other people are doing. That's where the inspiration for new recipes is going to come. And I got out, and then I was locked down. Yeah. And I realized working on this book was fascinating for me because it was so different. I was in Stockholm, I was in Paris, I was shopping in Stop and Shop. And I realized then how much the ingredients inspire me. And how much the work does. It's just working at something, being focused, knowing that this is what you're doing. It's both narrow and freeing at the same. I'm not doing a good job of describing this, but it's, you're so focused on something that everything you see becomes an idea for what you're working on. And so I think the work inspires the work.
Now, when you said you got out first and then there was the lockdown?
Yeah.
So you had done all your...
No.
No,
not all of it.
Okay.
The book, I worked on the book for about 3 years. So I worked right? And I was out and about and traveling and talking to other bakers. And I mean, travel, it's fabulous. And collecting, I mean, the recipe that's on the cover of the book was the last thing I tasted in Lisbon, and we were headed for the plane, and I couldn't talk to anybody about the recipe, and I just went home and made it, and it became the cover cake. The star anise, and that's Stop and Shop.
Well, so let's talk about first of all, I am officially anointing the number 14 as the Dorie's dozen.
I love that. Thank you.
So tell me about if there's a couple recipes you want to highlight in particular from the book of sort of more of those interesting flavor pairings that are there. I mean, there's one in particular, Munster and pears.
Did I do that?
We should have brought the book down. I forgot. I think it's actually on my desk upstairs too.
So there's a website called Eat Your Books, and you put in your cookbook, any cookbook that you own, and if they've indexed it, then you can just tap in the author or you're looking for something with pears, and it'll tell you all the recipes you've got. So they contacted me a few years ago, and they said, we've indexed, I don't know how many of my books it was at the time, and we have 1,500 of your recipes indexed. And I told my husband, I said, I can't believe I've done 1,500 recipes. He said, I can't believe I ate 1,500. But so it's like, I think, what did she do? Munster and pears. That was Munster? What a good idea.
You tend to have those.
Well, it's so working with savory was really interesting because I do have a sweet edge. So it's a tart, and it has a crust. It has pears, which are, thank you for the the visual reminder. Those I would like to have a pear with cheese.
Yeah.
Right, and then and I think, okay, that cheese is creamy. I can make a custardy kind of tart with it. I mean, things like there's a clam chowder pie in the savory chapter, and my husband and I were having clam chowder, and I looked at it and thought, it could be a pie. Yeah, he thought I was a little nuts, but it's a pie. The potatoes didn't work, but the clams, the vegetables, and I topped the pie. You know those oysterettes crackers? Really, the only reason to have chowder. But so that's the top crust, or just the crackers. I was very excited about that. But it's those crazy connections. I mean, there's one of my favorite recipes in the book is a miso maple cake. And I was making salmon. This doesn't sound appealing, I'm sorry, but I was making salmon with a miso maple glaze and tasted it and thought cake. but that's part of, all I have on my brain is recipes, ideas, cooking, baking, and so everything becomes.
I love it. So wait, can you tell us a little bit more about that salmon with the miso maple glaze?
Oh, it's good. It's good, right? So
because that actually sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's miso maple. There's a little bit of oil, I think, and I think maybe there isn't oil, and there's a little soy, and it's spread. You marinate the salmon, and then the salmon is roasted at about 400 degrees. It's good. And it makes a great cake.
So, okay, so here's another great question. Do you ever, and keep them coming, by the way, on Slido, do you ever experiment with different grains and flours, rye, buckwheat, sorghum, for different flavors? And do you have a favorite flour or flours?
So I do a little bit. And so there's spelt in those coffee in those cookies. There's rye. I like rye. I like I hold that thought, Dorie. But I was going to tell you about the world peace cookies. I'm not good enough to take. I don't know enough about all of those flours. So I've done more with rye and buckwheat than with others. And I like spelt. It has a kind of sweetness, and it's easy to use mixed with all-purpose. But that's not. Do you
have a favorite?
I like buckwheat. Yeah.
Why?
There's something, first of all, I like the way it looks, which is silly because you don't eat the looks, but there's something, I like that it's so good with chocolate. I just like it. I also like kasha. So that's, that's the groats, the kind of grainy part of buckwheat. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about how you began with the intention of writing a savory book, but it got a little sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. I mean, obviously there are savory recipes in there, and there's a particular focus on salt as well, that chapter on salt.
Right.
But why do you think you couldn't stick to just writing a savory book?
But I've written two savory books. So I wrote Around My French Table, and I wrote the book that was going to be my last book, Everyday Dorie, and that's a cookbook. I don't know. I thought, okay, well, I'll just make a cake. It won't be for the book. And it just kind of grew like that. I started this book in the breakfast section. I never work in sections, so that makes me sound more organized than I am. I kind of don't know what I have until the editor says deadline's looming. It's true. I mean, so it's not only what if, it's like, oh, today I'll make, and then I don't really have a list. But because it was a scone that started the book, I started with breakfast, and I love breakfast baking. And I really haven't had a chance to do that in a lot of books. And I think the sweet stuff started in breakfast because breakfast, like, what about a bundt cake for breakfast? Well, I put muesli in it, so, right? Like breakfast cereal, so it's breakfast. I don't know. I think that's sweet.
It just sort of worms its way in. How many? Oh my gosh, maybe you don't know how to answer this, but how many times?
Because I haven't known how to answer.
No. I just am trying to unlock the secret here. But how many times do you think it takes before you feel like a new recipe that you've created has arrived?
It's hard to say, because sometimes I'll make something and it's great, right? And I never stop at that point, because that could just be luck. So I make it again, and then everything. So I pencil paper, cross-outs, 3 stars or hearts, depends if it's right. A check mark when I've written it. My notebooks are a mess, but they're my own kind of like symbol stuff. And then I send it off to be tested.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it has to come back. So it's always, 2 is the minimum. And
who are your testers?
so I have only one tester. I have tasters, but I have only one tester. I work with a woman named Mary Dodd, and we've been working together for about 10 years. Yeah. And so she tests all of my recipes.
And I presume she's a very skillful baker.
Yes, but she's a home baker. So Mary stopped me at the farmer's market with her 2 little kids who are no longer little, and said, I live in the neighborhood if you need help. I love to bake. And I said, thank you, I don't need help. And she said, here, take this. This is my telephone number. And I put it in my pocket. And a week later, someone didn't show up for a video shoot. And I called her and said, remember you said if I needed help? And what I didn't know was the gymnastics she had to do to get a babysitter, right? But she showed up and never left. And so I think it's 11 years that we're together. And so, but she's a regular home baker. She's become an extraordinarily good baker, doing this, and she's very organized, as you need to be as a tester. But yeah.
Well, that's good to know, because I guess I was wondering, do you turn to a professional baker to do the testing, or it's actually very heartening to hear that an extraordinarily good but home baker is the person who does the testing for you.
With the same tools that.
What kind of feedback does she give you? Does she just say yes or no, or this didn't work, or?
Sometimes she actually lists all her neighbors who tasted what it was. And sometimes she sends pictures of the entire soccer team eating whatever. Yeah. So she'll do things like do you really have to measure this into another bowl? It would be nice if I didn't have to wash another bowl. So and that's really helpful. Yeah. Sometimes she'll say, I think you should check the level of this spice. I think it's a little much. So she's really, I write the whole recipe for her. At this point, I probably could just give her a shorthand version, but I want her to test the words. Does it describe exactly how things are done? Are you not sure? Sometimes I'll say, beat for 3 minutes, and she'll come back and say, I think it looked better after 5 minutes. It didn't look good at 3. It looked like this. And she'll describe it and say, it's really important for me.
Yeah. Oh no, I can imagine that it's crucially important because ultimately people are making these, you want them to have a good experience at home when they're making the recipe.
The only reason to write a recipe is so that someone can make it and be filled with joy. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I'm a cheerleader for everyone who goes into their kitchen and makes something. I want it to be great. I want you to be happy. I want you to give it to somebody and smile and be proud of what you've done. It's a big responsibility.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate that about you a lot because everyone knows there are some recipes that you've tried at home. You're like, there's no possible way this was tested in a regular human's kitchen, right? Because it's like
it just made me feel terrible. The egg was missing in the speculoos. Yeah, fortunately, we could put a little erratum. Is that the singular? Erratum?
Of erratus, erratum.
I think it's erratum.
Yes, right?
Yeah. We could put it in a. Yeah, the egg. I woke up in the middle of the night and said, "I think the speculous recipe has a problem." There were 300 recipes in that book. It just came to me in a nightmare, and I got up in the morning. I didn't even get up in the morning. I got up and made. Yeah. So sometimes, even though we've tested, it was horrible.
Okay, well, we've more good
Moving
questions
on.
coming in. Oh, this is two really good ones here. First of all, how important is the maker of the ingredients, i.e., Penzeys versus McCormick spices, King Arthur flour, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
So, sorry, forgot I was wired. You've got to start with good ingredients to get something good at the end. It's just kind of basic. But I think you want to start with stuff you like. If you like McCormick's cinnamon more than you like Penzeys, then you should be using McCormick's cinnamon. You're baking and cooking for yourself to your taste. That said, it would be so great if everybody could use good chocolate. Just there are ingredients that really, really make a difference. But the ingredients they're always important.
Okay. But you also said you got a lot of stuff from Stop and Shop. Good ingredients there?
So I always, I'm not a fancy person. I work really hard to get as much flavor as I can out of the ingredients. But the same way that I want everyone to be successful, I want everybody to be able to make this stuff. There's nothing worse than wanting to go into the kitchen and make something and not be able to get ingredients. So I'm really happy to be able to use ingredients that everyone can get.
Yeah.
It's important to me.
Yeah. And I think that kind of adaptability is really important. That's been a really big influence in my own sort of cooking adventures because my parents came to the United States in 1973, and there weren't all that many Indians here at the time. And so my mom had to be very creative in finding every substitution under the sun.
To be able to get the flavors.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
And so, it's a very common, story, generation after generation in the United States. But, that's to your point. Like, if you can't find something maybe that you're totally familiar with, like when she first came here, coriander was like impossible to find,
Yes.
right? So basic things like that. Do with what you have and try to see like the best that you can come up with.
And also to get to know yourself, know thyself, but think about what you like. Often people say, I want to get started in baking. What should I do? Pay attention. Just pay attention to how you're working. Taste things. Think, is this what you like? Think about what you really like. Can you Just because I tell you to use nutmeg doesn't mean you have to. You know, you can just leave it out, or use cinnamon because you like it more, or don't use ginger. I mean, people think that baking is like this, but there's so much room. I mean, please don't play around with, the baking powder or the baking soda. Leave those alone. But within a recipe, there's room for you to make it so that it will be what you really enjoy.
Is there really room?
There's room.
I know there are really good bakers in the audience right now, so you're going to tell me, of course there is. But like when I see a baking recipe, that's the one thing that I always have to take a deep breath and be sure that I've got every level exact, because it always has seemed like an exact science to me. Because and then especially then you put it in the oven and you keep your fingers crossed,
right,
and you
nothing
can't
you can
intervene
do
until it's done.
Yeah.
Whereas on the stove, you can intervene through the whole process.
Yeah, but you also need. Okay, I might have been playing a little fast and loose. I'll go back. But no, but with cooking though, there's a million judgment calls. Right? Yeah, you can make a change, but you have to know that that's the mid-course correction that you need. Okay, you need to measure accurately. Your oven needs to be preheated. You need to put an oven thermometer in there so you know that it's right. You need to follow the instructions, which is when we were in the back and there were some students. I said, I think baking is easier than cooking because you just follow the directions. I think so.
I wonder if it's a temperament thing. There's another good question that came in. Someone who was wondering, how do you know that an ingredient is good? Because they were saying they don't know their Hershey's from their Ghirardelli.
Taste. I mean, for something like chocolate, it's easy. Taste. And Hershey's may be the chocolate you like. There are companies that, have good practices, and that's important. Where ingredients come from can be important, but it's really the most important thing is for you, I think, to taste and to find what you really like. Because if I tell you that I like really bitter chocolate and you love white chocolate, you're not going to like what I make. I want you to make something that you like.
Yeah. Okay, how about this one? If you could only keep...
When it comes to picking the best, the most favorite, or only one, already I'm getting nervous.
Okay, well, fortunately, this is not a recipe question, but if you could only keep one piece of baking equipment.
Oh, this is easy. I have an answer.
Which one would it be?
Yeah. Do I want to give up my stand mixer? Nope. but I often think about when I'm working. I think about recipes like the recipe for cream puffs or for gougere éclair, the choux paste. I make it in the mixer. Somebody made that, Catherine de Medici's pastry chef made it for, everybody in the court by hand. I make brioche in the mixer, but when I learned to make it, I was taught to make it by hand. You need a spoon, but working by hand, touching, getting to know the ingredients. I mean, that's my favorite kitchen tool.
It's one of the most joyful things about baking, right? Because we were talking earlier back there about kids, and they're really just attracted to it because they love to stick their hands, and really be a part of what they're actually making.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a lot of people I know took up pottery recently, and said that they loved watching something grow under their hands. And I thought, that's what bakers do when I'm going like this because I'm now, you don't know this, but it's like the butter into the flour for biscuits. But it's you're touching and you're watching things change under your hand. You're connected to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's satisfying.
So let's go back to the book for a second, because I did want to talk to you about the chapter. Let me make sure I get the name right, about Salty Side Up. So tell us about that.
Well, that was what the whole book was supposed to be, right? So it's baking. So everything goes into the oven, but it's a mix of things. So I think it starts with a savory cake. So a loaf cake that's with goat cheese and herbs, and so I live can I say I live part-time in France if during the pandemic I didn't? Yes. Yeah, my apartment is still there. So I'm a part-time Parisian. I'm leaving on Saturday. And in Paris, in France, at a cocktail hour, you often get a little slice of a savory cake. Usually it comes from Picard and it's frozen, but that's another story. This one's homemade. So it's a quick bread. So that's in the chapter, the Clam Chowder Pie. I made a jelly roll that, in the sweet section, that could be filled with ice cream or with jelly or with pastry cream, and it could be made, you could roll the short side up and have it be chubby and cute, or it could be long and elegant. And when I was making it, I thought, if I take the sugar out of it, would it work? And it did. And so I made, it's kind of like everything bagel and lox, but it's a jelly roll of cream cheese with lots of like poppy seeds and grains and stuff, and smoked salmon. And so it's a very simple but elegant start for brunch. What else is in there? It's not in that chapter, but it's close. So I love gougere, the cheese puffs, and I was playing with the dough and realized that, I mean, this may not sound like a revelation to you, but I was very excited. It doesn't have to be round. So it could be a little, like a cheese stick. And then I thought, oh, it could also be like those pokey sticks, the Japanese snacks that are long. So I piped cream puff dough, really long and skinny, and dipped it in chocolate. So I did both a sweet version and a savory version. This is the stuff that, like, I get really excited. My husband will be walking by and hear me say, yes! Yeah, I love this work.
Yes, the picture. That would be great. We're going to put a picture of your vegetable ribbon tart.
Oh, isn't that gorgeous? So this is so exciting. I made this for the first time. Oh, you're so pretty. I made this for the first time in Paris, and I was channeling my French friends, because the same way that they buy the savory cake from Picard, they're excellent at, they never admit to any of it, but they're excellent at taking kind of ready-mades and putting them together. So the base is puff pastry from the frozen, case. Then there's hummus underneath it, or it could be ricotta and herbs, or it could be tzatziki, or any kind of something creamy and nice. Yeah. And then vegetables and hard-boiled eggs if you want, and a little vinaigrette on top of it. And I called it, I was so proud of myself, I called it Fridge Fancy, because it really does, it's stuff that you could, just have in your refrigerator, empty your vegetable bin, and make something gorgeous.
That looks amazing.
You can do it.
I might actually be able to do that one, maybe.
You could do it.
You saved me with the prefab puff pastry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's fun because so what I do with it is I just kind of score it so that you see the little picture frame. And when it bakes, the inside puffs. And using your hands, you get to crush it and just push it down and play with it a little bit. And then all of the stuff that you put down stays in there and has just a little bit of extra texture.
Huh. And the preparation for the vegetables? The
A vegetable
rib,
peeler.
just ribboned.
Yeah,
ribbon.
just
Okay.
ribbon. Some of them you can just buy already ribboned. Fridge fancy.
I draw the line there, though. Draw the line there. Are there? Because I was thinking back to when you did your travels prior
Yeah.
to, in the couple of years prior to when the lockdown started. Are there countries where you love what they bake, but it's a little less intuitive for you, versus say your deep familiarity being a part-time Parisian with
Yeah.
French baking?
So I went to Denmark I went to Copenhagen and to Stockholm for the first time. And the yeasted pastries are so beautiful there, and I loved them, and I don't know how to do them. It's the way they're twisted, the way they're wrapped. I couldn't come home and do that. Then there are flavors. I remember being in Turkey and loving what I ate, but not. It was another world for me. I couldn't say, oh, that's a certain kind of chili pepper that they've mixed with. I just don't. I don't know it.
The breads in Turkey are fabulous. Oh my God, they're amazing. Okay, so there's different flavors, and was it for the yeasted doughs? Was it the technique or what was it that stumped you a little bit?
All that. I mean, maybe if I were a knitter, I would know how to wind those right. And maybe if I had had time, somebody could have like begged my way into a place to learn. But it was the kind of thing where I came home and thought, I can do it. No, I can't. I mean, there is YouTube, I know, but yeah.
Okay, someone wants to know, do you ever bake with gluten-free dough? And if yes, how do you find it different from wheat? Are there tricks to make it roll out?
So where is right there? Yeah. So we were talking about this in the green room because I've forgotten your name. Kate. I got the sound kind of right. Okay. Kate, who's graduating from the culinary program tomorrow, is celiac, and we were talking about gluten-free. You as well, yeah. I've used gluten-free flour cup for cup to do cookies and some cakes, but I don't have the answer for dough. Talk to Kate.
Shout out the answer.
I think there's a lot more experimentation for me to do, but cup for cup works really well for a lot of things.
Cup for cup, you said?
It's
okay.
Yeah, so a cup for cup means that you can take a cup of this gluten-free flour and use it to replace
The cup of
regular
flour.
all-purpose.
Okay.
But what Kate was saying was, and that was the question, the doughs are not, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not your person. But there are, I mean, I think what's so exciting now is that there's so much information available and there are so many good people writing. I'm thinking of Camille Evigny, Aaron's cookbooks. There's a lot.
And you can tell about how much different kinds of baking are becoming much more accessible because I just finished catching up on the Great British Baking Show, season 9, I think, right? And they had an episode of Free From, right?
Right, free from like everything.
Yeah.
Dairy-free,
Dairy-free, gluten-free, whatever free. I mean,
there was another free.
There was
a vegan.
full vegan
Yeah, there
one,
was a
yeah.
vegan.
Yeah. And that was the first time I'd seen that. Do you like that show?
I love the show.
Okay, phew.
So we just finished, this shows you what our lives are like. Last night we finished went back and finished, I think it was season 2 or was it 4, where Ruby Tando was on, right? Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. I wish Paul were a little nicer, but
I also don't understand why his handshake is all that important, but
I've had, I mean, I've never gotten one. So I couldn't, I'm not, you know, I watch the show, I am in awe.
same.
Right?
Yeah.
The courage to do this, the grace under pressure. So wait, I dropped my thing. Can you tell? I can hear myself. Wait,
It's okay.
can I just like leave it?
Yeah, you can just leave it. I don't even know, mine's in my back pocket. The grace under pressure because they're given like 2 hours to do a, yeah.
And an oven this big, and they're making 3 different kinds of. I think they're fabulous. I don't find it relaxing. I know I'm supposed to, but I find I'm nervous for them. I cry for them. Yeah.
I love how supportive they are of each other. That's actually
That's the best.
my absolute favorite thing. Okay, so here's another good one. Do your loved ones like your new fancy recipes? I did not write this question. Your fancy recipes or your old classics? Or both?
I was just going to say they better love both. So fancy's a funny word for what I do. I think I used to be fancier because I was learning. So I didn't go to culinary school, and I learned from books. I learned because I was very lucky to work with chefs who were generous and taught me. And so in the beginning, everything I made was fancy because I wanted to learn. So, I mean, if you gave me a cardboard box, I would pipe flowers on it because I needed to learn how to, I think my husband likes simple sweets. I think I've trained them. I'm very sensitive, so I've trained them to be sweetly honest. But no, I think I can't answer that question. I think my stuff has been simple for a long, long time.
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple more questions I have about the sort of the open arms attitude you have towards baking that comes across, or cooking in general also, in your work and in all the books here, because I think it's in this most recent one where there's a section for each recipe called Playing Around.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if you've done that before in your other cookbooks.
I've done it for 30 years.
So she's done it in all of them. My apologies.
No.
But I guess, why is it important for you to do that when we talked a few minutes ago about the painstaking process you go through to get a recipe exactly right?
So I think part of that is the creative insubordination, but most of it is the what if. So the thing about a book is it gets printed and it gets sent, you know, it has a deadline, you have to finish it, it gets printed, it's out. I kind of never stop. I'm always changing. I'll make something that I've made for years and I'll play around with it. And so the playing around was both a chance for me to say, yeah, this is the way I wrote the recipe. But if it were digital, and there wasn't digital when I started, I could give you I could go back and change it, or I could. So this is a chance to kind of say there are other possibilities in the recipe. That's what it does for me. But I like to think that it does for you. It gives you permission to fool around with the recipe, to make it your own, to play around. Yeah.
Someone wants to know, what is the best tip when baking that you can give us that you learned from Julia Child?
So I worked with Julia. I met her in 1991 at BU, and we started working together in 95. And I don't know that I have. Did she teach me something about baking? Okay, so I think I was going to tell you something more profound than baking that she taught me, but so we worked on baking the TV series Baking with Julia, and I wrote the book, and so there were 26 pastry chefs and bakers who came through her kitchen, and they would do something in a mixer, and they would put the bowl away, and Julia would grab the bowl back, and she'd say, "Look," and there'd be like that much left, and she'd say, "You always have to scrape it out. You need to use everything." And every time I'm in my kitchen, I look at the bowl and I think, would Julia be okay with this? Like, she's with me all the time. That's tiny. But what Julia, and I know there are people here who knew her. She, as funny as she was so serious, and she was so serious about her work. She was interested in everything. She worked so hard, and she always wanted to know what else was there to know, what was new. She was boundlessly curious. And we had an experience where she called me one morning, and she said, "Do you have a bread machine?" I said, "No, I'm not interested." She said, "Don't say that. If you haven't tried it, you don't know." She said, "I'm buying a bread machine this afternoon, and you should too." Because she wanted to learn how it worked. And I think about her when my natural tendency is to say, I don't care.
Okay, so, oh shoot, we're running out of
Are we
time.
at time?
No, there's just so many good questions. Okay.
I'm sorry, and I'm a long answerer.
No, but there's so many good questions. We're running out of time. That's the only problem. Okay, how about this one? What is comfort food for you? What did you make for the family 20 years ago that you're still making today?
Oh, chocolate pudding for sure. Rice pudding, all those soft. I know a lot of people don't like rice pudding. So my husband loves pie. I love making pie more than I love eating it. I love to make pies. So I make pies for him, but yeah, and cookies.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about some of the cookies that BU Culinary has prepared for us tonight.
Yeah.
We have the iced spiced hermits.
But that's
no,
not
that's
them.
that's the caramel crunch chocolate chunklet cookie, right?
That is.
That one.
That one.
Yes.
Right.
So tell us about that one first.
So I call them caramel crunch, but they have no caramel. But they do have some crunch. So it's a cross between a shortbread, a sablé, and a chewier cookie. They're slice and bakes, but I bake them in muffin tins so that they're all the same size. And the butter and the sugar caramelize because of the size of the, right? So you get that caramel flavor kind of for free. You don't have to make caramel, it makes it itself in the muffin tin.
By the way, I've sampled one. They're really good. Which picture we're going to put up next? Do we have any of the other pictures, or should I just pick one of the other two? Okay, I'll just pick one. How about the iced spice hermits?
So the ice spiced hermits. When I write these things, I never think I'm going to have to say them out loud. Yeah. So I had never made hermits before, but they're a New England. Do you know them as cookies? It's a New England cookie. It's about 200 years old. It's a spice cookie. You make it as though you were making a biscotti, but you don't bake it a second time. So it's a log of dough that spreads in the oven, and then it gets sliced. I put some raisins in, but it could have, I know there are raisin haters. It could have ginger. Do you like raisins?
I like them more now than I used to, actually.
You were a raisin.
I was a very hardcore raisin hater. I think I blame a lot of the things I don't like on what I was forced to eat as an elementary school student. but I'm okay with them now.
Okay, I get questions from people all the time. Why do you put raisins inside? Because I love them. You don't have to do it. Don't do it. It's okay. You can put a little bit of ginger in. And so they're spiced, they're chewy, and they have just a little bit of confectioner sugar icing over them. And I made them because I was in Big Y, which is like Stop and Shop but not. And they were right near the cheese counter, and they looked so good. I didn't buy them, but I said I was going to go home and learn how to make them.
And we do have a picture of the last recipe that we're going to talk about briefly. I'll just,
Yeah,
the devil's thumbprint.
the devil's thumbprint. So chocolate, right? And so they can be filled anyway. They can be filled with jam. They can be filled with dark chocolate. And the pink, and that's what we're going to have tonight, is ruby chocolate. That's its natural color. And it has, well, you'll taste it, it has a tang, a kind of acidic flavor to it. It's really interesting. And so I love it because it's beautiful, and I didn't have to do anything to make it beautiful. No, I mean, again, you know, that I think that ingredients themselves can be naturally beautiful. Like, you know, you make a bundt cake, and it's gorgeous, and the pan did it for you. It's like the cookies, and I love when something can be that easy and that beautiful. And so beauty comes with that chocolate. It's automatic.
Okay, I'm going to practice a little creative insubordination myself. And
What are you gonna do?
overtime by a few minutes, okay? Because I want to talk to you for a second about chocolate chip cookies. A quick poll, okay? Snap poll. Raise your hand first if you are a soft chocolate chip cookie person. Okay?
Oh, look at you out
And
there.
raise your hand if you are a crispy chocolate chip cookie person. I will still.
Wait a second. Where's the option?
I gave between soft and crispy. No?
What about the option?
Am I missing another one?
Yeah. What about where it's kind of crispy around the
And gooey on the-
outside
okay.
and chewy on the?
Is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
I'm definitely a soft person.
So you like warm cookies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's taken me forever to find like the recipe where they come out soft and stay that way.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Someone told me cornstarch.
Well, that would be like using pastry flour. I don't know.
Does it work?
Where are the cones?
Like a little bit of cornstarch?
No, I just have a good recipe that works.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
This is one of my coworkers.
Right.
Thank you, Karen. Okay.
Okay, I think you have to give it to 100 people. Right, it's not, yeah. I can't hear.
Uh-huh. She was saying she
Oil?
works in you work in a bakery. Yeah, and they use oil in their chocolate chip cookies for ice cream sandwiches. And it keeps it softer.
I'm so glad I came tonight. Thank you. I mean, I was happy anyway, but you knew that, right? Yeah. So I'm a kind of crispy person in general. And so I've been playing with my chocolate chip cookies for years. And the ones in Baking with Dorie, that would be me, spread a lot, so they're thin. So, and they do get crispy, and they get kind of wrinkly, which I like. They have like wrinkles, circles of wrinkles, and they're soft in the center, and I like that.
I'll give them a try.
Thank you.
I will. Okay, one more.
Let
And
me
this
know.
is sort of how we come full circle a little bit, because I had the privilege of doing a radio interview with you 5 years ago, and we talked about then how you say that like every cookie has a story, right? And it just made me think, like, how many more stories do people's recipes have now because of the circumstances
yes.
right? So why is it important for us to remember, like, when you think that, why is it important for us to recognize those stories and that history behind the recipes that we love or are even first getting acquainted with?
Don't you think that's fascinating? You're right that I think that food that we had during this difficult time will carry memories and feelings in place. But you know, as a writer, I find that I'm more interested in a recipe when I can tell a story about it. I mean, I love the food. It's not, the food is never separate but when it can be placed in context, when it has a recipe has a history or some connection, I think it's more interesting. I think it speaks to us and makes us actually taste it differently because we're looking for a part of that story. Wow, Meghna, the thought that we now have a new set of memories, of food memories because of that, yeah.
Well, Dorie Greenspan, what a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
I mean, we could have gone on for a long time, but there are cookies and Dorie's book.
Oh, there are cookies.
As well
Goodbye.
out there. Because our partners from BU's program in Food and Wine help prepare them. And the Spiced Hermits, the Devil's Thumbprints, and the Caramel Crunch Chocolate Chunklet Cookies. They're all out in the lobby now. And as a reminder, Brookline Booksmith has copies of Baking with Dorie for purchase tonight. And since we are in the holiday season, I'm going to plug some things happening here at CitySpace. Our annual presentation of A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens classic. We're going to be doing it here on December 20th, where we have people from WBUR reading various parts of the story. I shall be one of your readers, along with Tiziana Deering, Jack Lepiarz, Bob Oakes, and Rupa Shenoy. And we'll have musical interludes between the sections of the book. It's really a lovely, lovely evening. And it will be the 19th anniversary of the event, of the reading of A Christmas Carol. And it's my favorite thing that we do all year long because all the proceeds go to Rosie's Place. With your ticket purchase. So you can get tickets now. You can sign up for our newsletter. It's all at wbur.org/events. So I hope to see you then, and thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Dorie Greenspan.
Thank you.